The spear is a tool that has its origins back in the lower Paleolithic several 100,000 years ago. A tool once used for hunting megafauna would later see its use shift towards warfare and defence.
The spears at Moss Farm, I suppose, put our metalwork assemblage into the broader story of that landscape, because spears are a common find in the late Bronze Age in the Flag Fen Basin.
In the Bronze Age, we see some of the first specialised weapons being produced, such as the sword or halberd, but the spear already has thousands of years of pedigree in this department. 8 spearheads and a partial head were found from the Must Farm pile-dwelling settlement, and some of those spearheads were found with their shafts.
You know, the settlement gets burnt down, so there is that sense that maybe, you know, there is a real threat, and maybe the burning down was part of that story, which might say, well, why you would want to have a spear.
Some of the spearheads were placed with other scrap pieces of bronze ready for recycling when a travelling metalworker next passed through the area.
I think the assemblage of spears at Moss Farm are an indication of what's going on in the landscape generally. Spears are a common find within the Flag Fen Basin. I think they're also perhaps an indication of the world that these people were living in, and the possibility that swords and spears might be necessary. But equally, maybe we can also think of the spears as a hunting tool. So, for example, we've got lots of evidence that they are hunting wild boar and red deer. So maybe that's part of it. So maybe, like a lot of the other items of the toolkit, there's more than one function to these objects.
The complete spears showed no evidence of use when they fell into the water below. Like the sickles, axes and gouges, the spearheads have a socket, meaning they were cast from a 3-part mould that included a core to form the socket.
Based on the finds at Moss Farm, there's no evidence that they were casting the spearheads in the settlement, but there is evidence that they were making the wooden halves for the spears.
9 spear shafts were found, mostly made from ash heartwood, as it's a strong, flexible material, ideal for the purpose. One unusual spear shaft was made of hazel roundwood and was 3.4 metres in length. Where they were found suggests they were not kept in the places people lived. There's probably a very good reason for this, in that a 2 or even 3 metre spear is a nuisance to get in or out through the door and store once inside. Complete spears were stored in the light structures, such as Structure C, which had 5 spears. This could represent a community storage space or area next to the settlement entryway at Structure 4.
You know, one scenario is that a spear is what everyone had, and it's not indicative necessarily of an impending threat. Or we could also say that, you know, our settlement appears to have a defensive quality about it, and that maybe part of that story is that you also have swords and spears, and that maybe our end to our story, which is the burning down of the settlement, is to do with some existential sort of threat or something. So that's a giant leap of interpretation, but maybe that's, you know, one of the ones that we can think about.